Welcome into the Men Are Forged podcast. I'm your host, Cartwright Morris. Through this podcast and through my coaching services, as well as my men's mastermind, I help high performers pursue a higher quality of life. This is my life mission, to help men step into who they're called to be and be a more well-rounded and intentional man in their business, in their family, and in their community. If that interests you, you can go to menareforged.com to find out more information about my high-performance coaching, as well as some of the other services I provide. That's menareforged.com. Today's episode is with James Belt. James is a businessman here in the United States, but he is the author of the book Hope Realized. And this comes from his revelations of spending time in Nicaragua, seeing real third world poverty and trying to understand, where does hope come from? Even in the midst of poor circumstances, difficult times, how do we engage and grasp the hope and what that means in our life? And so we really unpack that in this episode, and I hope you're really enjoying James Belt. You can check out more about James at jamesbelt.com, as well as on LinkedIn or Twitter. Now to today's episode. All right, welcome in. Men Are Forged podcast. Got a great guest today. He's the author of Hope Realized. By the time this recording is posted, hopefully all of y'all have already bought your book by then. But I have the author, James Belt, here with me today. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Cartwright.
Yeah, James, coming all the way from Maryland.
Yeah.
I guess that's still below the Mason-Dixon line, man. So do you still get the humidity like we do here in the South?
We do not. Well, in the middle of the summer, we do quite a bit. Yeah. And I'll tell you a quick little aside. We are claimed by no one in Maryland. We are below the Mason-Dixon line, not claimed by the South, but also not claimed by the North.
No. Yeah. Yeah. But hey, y'all kind of have your own thing, crab cakes and, we have
it going on.
Yeah. Y'all know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, James, for my audience who, I love to kind of give a little backstory to who they are and what really grew them, shaped them. And kind of one big thing is, just really what was your upbringing like? What were kind of some of the high moments? What were some of the big memories that still resonate with you as an adult?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a two-parent home. Grew up in Maryland my entire life. We moved around a bit as my dad started his business, and my mom was finishing college, but lived in kind of just a little farther south in here for a while. Moved back up and started out. My family wasn't super religious. My grandfather was a Methodist pastor. So my mom grew up with a faith background. My dad was what some people call Creasters, I guess, Christmas, Easter, church attender.
Right.
I learned that term relatively recently, actually. And so grew up, with a background of we believe in God and Jesus, but not a ton of depth there. And as we were growing up, we moved back to closer to where I live now. And I went from basically elementary school to middle school in a brand new community. And during that period of time, struggled a little bit just with self-worth. And as you can imagine, middle school, we've all been there, right? Mm-hmm. But entering a new school, not a lot of friends. And that's kind of when my parents started to jump into faith, really. They started to attend a church. My dad attended a weekend trip that really brought him to Christ, the relationship with Jesus. And that was a real change in trajectory for our family. We started to go to church. I started to get invested in by a couple of youth leaders. And, that lack of self-worth was still a challenge for me growing up. But I started to have people speak into my life in a way that was different, that they believed in me. They believed in a God that loved me and had a purpose for my life. And so that had a big impact on me, as well as I can talk about some other stuff in a minute here, but with my grandfather and some of the ways he invested spiritual hope in me. But long story short, I grew up grew up from there. You know, we were involved in the church, and that was a huge piece of my story, is being engaged at our church, our local church here in Maryland. And have an adopted sister, so two sisters. One from Nicaragua, actually, from my time there. And as I said, my dad started a business, so I grew up in a family starting a family business. And so it's been interesting to see the journey, you know, from my dad basically having, it was him and one other guy. They tell the story, they were there, it's a lawn care business. They were sitting on a pallet of fertilizer in the living room that they were running when they started the business, to now I actually have now taken over that business, and it's grown quite a bit. So that's been a neat journey to be a part of, as well, as I've grown up, and taught me a lot about just the value of hard work and the benefit of having a real opportunity. So it's a little bit about my story.
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, well, I mean, I'd love to start unpacking a little bit of that at some point, of just like the mix of your spirituality and your faith in work, and you know how we as Christians sometimes we compartmentalize that. But yeah, just going back to your upbringing. I mean, you said, you know, what about church that really established something in you? You know, one as a believer, but also as a man.
Yeah. So when I was, pretty young, we would go to the Wednesday night youth group type of thing. And I would go, and I have memories of being there for like spaghetti dinners and little events, but it was never more than that. And until my parents had a, life-changing encounter with Jesus, and their lives changed. And then, as that happened, I started going to youth group and kind of had a different perspective on it, I think because they had a different perspective on it. And I started to see that there was hope for me, and that there was a God that loved me, and that there was a different life I could live, And so it started to make me think about, okay, well, what does it mean to live a life for Christ? I'd always been given the value of hard work and treating people well and things of that sort, but it became more about, how do I serve people? How do I use my life to have an impact on others' lives? And how do I live really intentionally? Even from a younger age. One experience that was really forming in that is, I'm familiar with Young Life, but an organization that works with high school kids. I started to get really involved there, and my parents were a part of bringing Young Life to my school. So I was like the first kid.
Oh, wow.
So I got a lot of investment, obviously, from the Young Life leader, the staff person. And so that was a huge step for me as well, because it gave me the perspective of reaching out, that was his job, basically, was to reach out to the kids in my school. And so he kind of brought me along in that journey, and I got to play a role in that. So it really changed my perspective of maybe seeing life about myself, to seeing that life is really lived well when you make it about other people.
Yeah. So it's interesting, I just know my parents became Christians in high school through Young Life. So it's interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I mean, my life has drastically changed because of Young Life. I'm very, but I grew up, my parents were strong believers from, since I've been alive. Right. So I'm just curious, your experience, how you go from a parent that, like you said, was, what's the phrase? Creaster or something? What'd you
Creaster. I stole that, by the
way. That was the first time I've ever heard it. So I know the type, right?
Yeah.
To then being these strong believers that not only give their holidays to Jesus, they give their life to Jesus. So what were there some of the tangible qualities you saw in your parents, specifically your dad, towards you as a parent, or even in their own lives? Today's episode is brought to you by Thrive Marriage Lab. If you want your marriage to thrive, this is a great opportunity to you, because strong marriages are the bedrock of strong churches, organization, families, and community. This is a 12-month pathway for any of you that are looking to really have weekly engagement with experienced marriage counselors, not just one, but many. So go to restory.life/thrive to get on the waiting list for this great program that starts in April. That's restory.life/thrive. And make sure you put the word Forge in the promo code to receive a discount on your monthly fee. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, honestly, that I can think of specifically for my dad is that he started to live his life in a very intentional and impactful way. So, with me, but also with other people, I can remember when sometime around that time, I don't remember exactly, and I was probably 12. So, 28 years ago now. But he met a guy on the street, a homeless guy on the street, and felt like a calling in his heart that he should kind of build a relationship with a guy and buy him a tent. And that was something I'd never experienced before. My dad had always loved me. My parents had always loved me. Always, spoke words of encouragement to me. But it wasn't, there wasn't things like that happening in our house.
Right.
So then he started bringing me along. So he would do a lot of service type stuff, and he would start bringing me along on the journey, which was really neat to be a part of. And so, from a really early age, I had the opportunity to serve other people in that way. So those were some of the biggest changes that I saw, and just the way my parents treated each other, even and in our household. They never treated each other poorly, but you could definitely tell there was a change in what they thought was most important. That they loved each other, they loved us, and that they showed us what it looked like to love other people well.
Yeah.
Those were some of the changes I saw.
That's really cool. And that you have you have a memory of that change. That's really, really powerful.
Yeah, it is.
There's a contrast. It's just not assumed. It was like, there's something tangibly different here.
Yeah.
So, also you mentioned just having, like that young life leader, and that's a concept that I keep really thinking about and processing through, especially a modern day version of discipleship has to be, through a book or really structured and, intentional time. And not that that's bad, I think, anything, but I think we're missing kind of the big picture of, a lot of Jesus' disciples were followers of him. They just did what he did, very much in that culture. So it was interesting that you just told the story of, just going with the young life leader and starting that. And so, are you a dad? I forgot to ask you that. Are you?
I am. Yeah, I got a 3 and a 5-year-old. So.
How about that? Yeah. And so, someone who had strong parents, but also had influences outside of them, how important was that in your upbringing, and how much do you feel that value now, even for your kids, of having others really grow them and really do life with, and to really help them in their development? Yeah,
gosh, it's been invaluable. I tell people that I don't know why, but I've had many people, not just that young life leader, that step into my life and kind of play a mentor role or walk with me at various moments throughout my life, and play that role. Actually, in the book, I talk about my grandfather that was a Methodist pastor. He actually, a little different. He wasn't walking per se with me, although obviously my grandfather did, but he wrote me letters all throughout my upbringing. And, that still has played a role in my life now in the way I see myself, in just this idea of investing spiritual hope in people. And so, I wouldn't be where I am today without the investment of people. And a lot of it, it's been what you've said, discipleship, reading books, things of that sort. It's been a lot of walking along with people. And so I've had the same opportunity in some cases to do that with others at various points. And so that's been really neat. It's not just, maybe a book plays a role or a study of some sort, but it's not just that, it's actually walking out and doing something and living life together. As you said, I think that's what Jesus did, right? He was like, follow me. He wasn't like, sit down and read a book with me. I'm sure, they did a lot of that, a lot of talking about important stuff, but a lot of it was walking around. So,
yeah. Cause I imagined, Jesus, had a job before he stepped into his ministry, and it was probably with his dad, carpentry, or I think some scholars believe it was stonemasonry. Like, I'm sure he was just with his dad every day and just doing what his dad did. And I just think that's such a model that we've missed in the midst of discipleship. And it was usually around a business or a action point. And, so, I mean, some of my best mentors was, hey, I got to go do these things. You want to just come with? Sit in the car and just watch me do it. Like, that kind of stuff.
That's a great point.
So it's just interesting. So, so let's just jumping back into your story, James. I'm curious, you've mentioned Nicaragua a bunch of times. And so I'm just curious, what was the building up point to, when you go in there, I mean, that sounds like that was fairly recent, but, give us kind of the space between, leaving high school to, living in Nicaragua for 3 years.
Sure. So graduated high school, actually went in, and I had such an impact on the Young Life that I decided to jump in and lead Young Life as well, all through college and actually post college a bit.
Oh, wow.
Just post college, actually, no, it was just probably my senior year. My family was part of launching and starting a new church. And that was exciting for me to be a part of as well. I was, 22 around that age. And so it was neat to be a part of that journey. And so I was leading Young Life, kind of starting this new church. I went right into financial advising actually out of college. Didn't jump right back into the family business right out of college, but got into that and just started kind of living life there. I'll tell you as an aside, that was a challenging period of time in my life. I graduated college. I didn't have the same community with Young Life, things of that sort as I had. I was still leading Young Life, but it was just different, and I was working, all of that. And if financial advising is a great business and industry, but it's also very intense. And there's a lot of good and bad sides to it as far as the intensity and sales environment. And so definitely got pulled in a little bit to just the life of living, again, kind of for myself and, not always making the best choices in the way I was living. And I kind of was living, it wasn't a completely duplicitous life, but there was a bit of duplicity to it. And I came to kind of a realization of that along the way. But I was in that period when in 2006, so church started in 2002, 2006, the pastor of our church, Reed Robinette, who's had a great impact on my life as well. Our church was growing and he decided, well, our church should do something for missions. And he knew this guy, Tim Adams, who I still work with today, who was leading an organization called Orphan Network that was taking teams down to Nicaragua to partner with orphanages. So basically was creating relationships between churches and orphanages in Nicaragua, and that way funding as well as investing relationally in the kids.
Yeah.
And so my parents and sister jumped on it. I, at the time, was, busy trying to build my business and thinking about myself a lot. And so not completely about myself. But it just wasn't something that was on my radar. I was, never wanted to be a missionary. Was never really my dream. My dream was to be the guy that sent the check to help the missionaries. And so I didn't go on the first trip, but some coaxing along the way got me the next summer to go down with them and to travel down to Nicaragua. So I started doing the same thing they were doing. Every 6 months to a year, our church would take a trip down and visit this one particular community called El Cañon, just outside of the capital city of Managua, Nicaragua. Yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of a journey. I didn't fall in love right away per se with Nicaragua, but it was a bit of a love story in that sense of me, kind of seeing, wow, this is a neat place. And starting to ask myself questions about, well, why, it was like, you see poverty from the outside and you're like, that looks really bad. But then you start to know names, Maria Jose,
Yeah.
Josue, and you start to think, well, why are they stuck in this situation and I'm not? And so that kind of started to happen for me, especially having the finance background as I moved down started going down, not moved down, but started going down in 2007. So that's how we started heading down that way. That's kind of the beginning of the journey. So it was a kind of an accidental mission trip situation.
Yeah. So I'm really, it does sound like there's a theme here of you really kind of, starting a church, starting your like financial advising, getting in the Young Life Upstarting, joining your dad's business, being the second generation family, but like you enjoy the building part of something, kind of getting something going. When did you kind of recognize that? When has that kind of been something you've really noticed as kind of part of your ethos a little bit?
I think it's always been a bit of my ethos, a bit of who I am, maybe because of growing up, from a very early age in a family that was, starting a business. I'll say though, when it really flipped a switch was probably in late high school, early college, when I started to realize that self-worth problem I had from middle school, that just kind of stayed with me, for a long time. And it sneaks up on me today still. But it was late high school, early college when I started to realize that my life actually mattered and I could have an impact and that maybe I had some leadership gifts. And so that's when it kind of became, maybe I can be a part of leading something, of creating change, of making a difference. And maybe I have some gifts to lead other people. And I don't know that I would have said that at the time, to be honest with you, that I would have recognized it. But now looking back, I've seen that that's when that journey started. And then I think late college is really when I started to understand, okay, well, this is something that I've been called to do or gifted to do, is to lead people and to start things. And so that's kind of the time frame when I started to think, okay, well, this is part of what I'm here for. Part of my purpose is to do this, to build things, to lead. And so I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not like you do have a good temperament that I think sometimes, like in the beginning of stages, something you got to have somebody who's kind of a little bit of a cooler hand, right? And so it seems like maybe God's blessed you with that gift.
Usually.
Usually.
My 3-year-old and 5-year-old, every once in a while, they try to test that theory.
Absolutely. You said, so when did you finally you made the official decision to go to Nicaragua, and what was that prep like? Was it learning Spanish? Did you know Spanish before? And you made the 3-year journey. Were you married at this time?
So wasn't married. So started going in 2007, kept going kind of every year from there. Was on this journey. I was engaged at the end of college, at a university, and thought that was my life. I'd kind of made it in my mind, as a financial advisor, so I'm a bit of a planner at times. And so the girl, however, in my senior year of college had a different plan. She didn't think that was what we were supposed to do. So she broke it off, which I'll tell you, that was a wake-up call of like, gosh, I had planned out my life, but the verse that says, man makes plans in his heart and God, numbers his steps, or that's not an exact quote, but you know what I mean? That was definitely a bit of that moment of like, oh, well, I guess I'm not in control. Yeah. And so I, all through my 20s, kind of struggled with, I dated and things of that sort, but never really feeling like I found someone or they felt like they found me as the person that they were supposed to be with for the rest of their life. And so as I kind of continued on this Nicaragua journey, that was kind of a part of it. I jokingly said, if I turn 30 and I'm not married, I'm going to join the CIA. I don't know why I picked that. Probably too many, movies.
Probably.
But yeah, so I was going down there, wasn't married. No real prospects necessarily, various moments on the radar from that standpoint. And in 2011, I was on a trip down there. And I tell this in the kind of first chapter of Hope Realized, my book, is I was on a hike with some kids from the orphanage. So El Cañon, that word means canyon in English. And so you can imagine it's, Nicaragua has a lot of mountainous areas and volcanoes and things of that sort. So you're heading up this hill and you go down and there's this wall and this road that kind of goes straight down, and you'd have no idea there's a community there unless you entered it. So that's where this orphanage exists, in this area of El Cañon. So I'd gone on this hike with the kids, and as you can hike through this kind of jungle-ish, subtropical area. We hiked up this hill, and you could oversee kind of all of El Cañon from there, and you could actually see the road. There's this pretty view of, you can see the poverty in the midst of it, but pretty view of kind of that tropical, what you'd imagine, area, kind of wind blowing. And I felt at that moment, this it wasn't an audible voice, but it was the closest thing I've ever experienced to that, of God saying to me, "Where are you going?" And I was like, in my head, I was thinking, I'm going home. Like, tomorrow I got an airplane ticket. I'm going home, back to my nice, comfortable life. And I started, but at the same time, I'll tell you, I was doing some discipleship with some guys, and I was telling them just like, hey, life is found in following God's call for your life, wherever it may lead. And I was like, oh, I guess this is a money where your mouth is kind of moment. And felt like, okay, well, I'm somebody that has the opportunity, not married, don't have kids. I had started getting back engaged in the family business. So I was like, well, maybe I can negotiate with my dad to work from Nicaragua and earn a living that way while I do missionary work, and came back home and started to explore the option. So you asked the Spanish question. I took Spanish all through high school and college, almost a minor in Spanish. However, when I moved to Nicaragua, I learned that I knew very little Spanish. It's like, wow. Well, that was a useful however many years of my life.
Right.
It came in handy, but
but then I bet like once you got there and started using it, it just like you probably learned more in, a few months there than you did the entire school.
I did. I took Spanish classes when I got there, but I learned I learned my Spanish on the streets of Managua. So that was, that's basically when I went from hola and, donde está to being able to speak and actually have a conversation with someone.
That's great. So so give us a highlight from that 3 years being there. What was the kind of the biggest impact you felt like you had on yourself or on others?
Yeah. So when I moved there intentionally with the idea of not having a exact plan, if that makes sense. I didn't want to come in with this is what we should do to change Nicaragua kind of mentality, but a willingness to learn and listen. And you said I'm from Maryland. I'm from the East Coast. I'm type A. I like to build things. Not easy for me to sit still and kind of wait and try to listen to God and listen to others. So that was a challenging time for me, to be honest, the first few months of being there. So one thing I definitely learned was I'm not in control, and that I still had some growth to do in trusting God with things. And so that was a big thing. But what I learned, a highlight that I learned, is as I started to work with people, I was doing agriculture projects, teaching people how to grow and kind of leading the charge in that sense. We have staff, still have staff there that do a lot of the on the ground teaching of actual ag stuff, helping people start businesses. We started a bike business, Nika Bike Shop there, and teaching carpentry, having carpentry, vocational training, and then also partnering with churches. One church in particular in El Cañon, I started to see that, I said earlier when we were talking about this question I had in my mind, why are people stuck in poverty, despite the fact that they seem like they're just as intelligent, that they're made, by God in the same image of God that I made it. So why are they there and I'm here? And what I started to realize and learn was poverty, the way we think about it and see it, are all the homelessness, lack of education, hunger, all of that. It's really fed by and perpetuated by hopelessness. And hopelessness in the sense of both practical, so a lack of a real opportunity, and spiritual, a lack of a clear identity on who God created you to be. Your environment and the people around you have constantly reinforced the fact that you were created for less than, that there's nothing more for you. And then you look around, you're like, well, yeah, there's nothing more for me, and so
hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Yeah, exactly. So I started to learn, okay, well, that's where that hopelessness, and I call it the lie of hopelessness, because I don't think God created us ultimately to be hopeless. And that lie of hopelessness, the root, I like to think of it like an iceberg, 90% below, 10% above. That root of the lie of hopelessness is what's really feeding those byproducts. So addressing poverty is done well when we actually address the root cause,
right?
The thing that's perpetuating and feeding it, the lie of hopelessness. And so that's what it's taught me, is if we really want to make a difference, we need to address both practical and spiritual hope, and what I call all-in hope. When those two pieces of the hope puzzle are combined, I've seen life change happen. And I've seen it in myself. My own story is part of what's taught me that, to be honest.
So it sounds like that was the beginning of the book right there. That got you kind of going. Yeah. So take us on the journey of turning this into this book, this desire for hope to be realized, right?
Yeah.
And why hope specifically you kind of just gave us, but kind of dive in more of, does that lead to, was that studying in the scriptures? Was that leading in, is the book more focused on the Nicaragua side or your own story, or what? Is there kind of all three?
I would say all three. Yeah. So I think it was discovery, biblically, some of that probably done actually, well, I can tell you, done prior to, it was more of like, oh, wow. I'd read this before, but I hadn't seen it fully until I had this experience in my life. And it made what was written in scripture about hope and the power of hope more real for me. And so that, my time in Nicaragua, of seeing both the hopelessness side of it and the power hopelessness has, the grip it has on people, and then the power of that real all-in hope to create change in lives. So that it was experiential in that sense. And then as I started to write this book, so I was, as I was getting ready to move home from Nicaragua, I still go there quite a bit now. I still work with NicaWorks, the organization that I went down with. I started to think, I learned a lot on my journey. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I should really write down what I learned, at the very least for myself, and to share with, family and friends and maybe other people that would want to jump into this. So I just felt like I should write it down, whether it turns into a book that I read to my kids, or I didn't have kids yet, but you know what I mean? Like,
right.
God willing, or if, or whatever, that I'm going to write this story down. And as I started to do that, I looked at my life and realized, wow, all in hope, both practical and spiritual, have played a huge role in my life. And that's why I am where I am today, because of that practical and spiritual hope that I've been afforded through the blessings of God, in a sense, like being born, it's like I won the birthright lottery in a sense by being born in the family and the place I am. And then also the spiritual investment and, the way that's changed me over time, that I've seen. I mentioned my grandfather, which I talk about a lot in the book, of that investment. And then when this is a kind of real quick, interesting piece I talk about a little bit again in Hope Realized, is my grandmother actually tutored me when I moved from elementary school to middle school. My parents figured out that the school system I was in was significantly behind the school system I was entering, especially in English. And so I needed tutoring, and my grandmother happened to be an English teacher. she tutored me, and made that investment in me. And that was, again, just another picture of practical hope. Somebody saying, I was a punk middle school kid for sure, with a lack of self-worth, but my grandmother didn't see me that way. She said, no, you're worthy of the investment to help you get, up to speed and to thrive. And so, those two things were going on kind of, concurrently to some degree with my grandfather and my grandmother, different sides of the grandparent tree. But anyway, that I started to see those things in my life. And that's obviously not the only one. And the lives of other people around me that, wow, like this is a consistent story. And then I started to look at, well, what does Jesus have to say about it? And you look at the woman at the well, you look at healing, some of the healing and things of that sort, and that practical and spiritual plays a role in all of it. So,
yeah, man, that's cool. Gosh. And so what's been the hardest part about writing this book though?
The hardest part?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Probably, getting over, does anyone actually want to hear what I have to say? And then trying to think about how can I put into words what I have in my heart and my belief in the power of hope in a way that other people can grab onto it. My hope for the book is that it encourages people, gives them a different perspective of poverty, of hope, and their ability to make a difference. And so, I hope it's kind of like an encouragement to say, like, you have what it takes. You have something to bring to the table and making a difference. So thinking about how can I write it in a way that takes people on the journey I took and leads them to the kind of that next step of saying, okay, well, I'm going to jump in and make a difference somewhere. Or maybe they already are and they're just feeling encouraged. Like, I'm going to keep at it, even though it's hard. So it's probably that. It's probably thinking about how do I express this in a way that gets that across. And then how do I get enough words in it to make it a book? That was those are some of the journeys. And then writing in the midst of, to be honest with you, I got married. So I got married halfway through my time in Nicaragua. I kind of missed that part of the story. We had kids in 2006, first child in 2016, and then another child in 2018. So balancing all that, I'll be honest, I wouldn't recommend writing a book and launching a book when you have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and trying to run a business all at the same time. But the story was important enough to me that I felt like it was something I needed to do at this time. But probably managing all that and together has been, another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. So what, I think people sometimes interpret hope as this big outlandish thing. Hopefully it's they interpret it more like a wish.
Yes.
But what have you found is the more practical side to hope that makes it more real for you and your story, but as just for people in general?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So I think that's one of the challenges is understanding, okay, well, hope as I know it versus the hope that maybe we're talking about here. And I think often we do think of it as a wishy-washy feeling. Like, I hope I pass the test. I hope my team wins the game. For me, it's the Ravens in football. I hope the Ravens win,
Yeah.
And as opposed to, this foundational idea of hope that says, we're not just hoping something happens. It's a hope based in something real and concrete. That provides you with the means to move from where you are today to where God created you to be. So that's why I say it's both practical and spiritual. It's a clear understanding that God created you on purpose and for a purpose. That I think is foundational to really this idea of all in hope. Because if you don't know who you truly were created to be, it's easy to see why you would think hope's a wishy-washy feeling, right? Because what am I hoping in? But if you have something foundational and you're like, well, no, God created me for more, doesn't mean that, if you believe that suddenly you're becoming a multimillionaire. That's not what I'm saying. It's more of saying, well, what has God created you for? What is the potential he's put inside you? And then also that practical side is that real opportunity. So, lacking the ability to kind of exercise that potential. It's very hard to move towards it, right? So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody says, well, James, you told me that, God created me for something more, and you encouraged me and you told me about God, but I'm still stuck in El Cañon, and I have no means. Nobody's investing in me to give me the opportunity to build a business or to get a job or something of that sort. So how am I supposed to exercise this God-given potential? And that's where I see the practical being super important to creating that real change, is saying, yes, you were created by God for something more, and you're worthy of an investment of practical hope, of real opportunity. And that sometimes, in the case of what we're doing in Nicaragua, it might have looked like starting a business. It might have looked like training in some kind. It can look different depending on, but it's that kind of hope. It's not it's a hope that comes with something foundational, a belief that you're created for more, and then an investment that gives you the opportunity to take full advantage of it.
Yeah. Man, I love the way you put that. That's really good. Life verse of mine is Hebrews 6:19. Hope reaches behind. It's hope and anchor to the soul, reaches behind the veil, and like you were saying, it's connected to something that's like unmoving.
Yeah,
I love the way you articulated it really well.
Thank you,
James. But so where do you see hope playing in your business right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So it's something I've thought about. Is we have a saying, better because we're here because we care. That's kind of our vision, our charge at our business. And I see our business as really an opportunity to say the same message to our people, to our team. Like, hey, we want to help you reach your God-given potential, and also to the customers that we serve. So, we want them to know that we believe in them, that we believe that we can make a difference in their lives, and that we want to help do what it takes to get them to their God-given potential. And so, that looks like providing opportunities for our people. It looks like being an encouraging environment, an environment that while isn't Christian per se, as far as it's a business, a lawn care business, that the undertone of it is based on the realities of Jesus and the way he called us to love people. Same thing in the community. We hope that our community is better because we're here. That we're providing hope, we're giving back. We're making a difference in our community, so that it's better because we're here because we care. Which I think is in some senses, in a lot of ways, a way of living out that hope that I have in Christ. And so, that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah.
Most.
Man, that's really, James, 'cause I think there's something we really miss in the church, because I think I grew up and it was maybe unspoken, but there's like there's the people that extend the kingdom, therefore they're in the mission field, they're in the ministry or church, and then there's the financiers of the kingdom. Those people who make money and pour into that. But really, like, just breaking down the walls, the assumption of like, no, you could do a lot more, actually more impact as a business, right? Serving your people well, allowing serving your clients well, your employees, the community. Like, there's just so much impact by you even just doing something in excellence that people want to do business with you because of your Christ-like traits. Like, that's crazy. Or how hopeful you are in the way you to your business and where your people are. So, like, I appreciate you saying that, because it is such a I think it's being kind of chipped away at and deconstructed of recent, but I think it's still a thing that's in the modern American church, right? So
I agree with you. Yeah. No, yeah. It's supposed to be all together, right? All congruent. Like, your whole life can look that way. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Absolutely.
And I think, a business is a great opportunity to make a difference in this world, in that sense. And so, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So you were in the mission field for 3 years. Do you still feel like you're in the mission field now?
I do. Yeah. Both here at work. And like I said, I was in Nicaragua a few months ago, and I go back soon. So between all of that, even every day with my kids, that's a mission field.
Yeah.
And I can, it's easy to get distracted and forget that. But ultimately our lives, are missions. We get to live that out every day. We get to, be a picture of the hope we have for others and the hope God has for them, in everything we do. And so, that's what I try to live by.
That's great. And it sounds like you're still connected down there in Nicaragua.
I am. Yeah. So NicaWorks, the organization that I went down with, I'm still a part of that team, and we're still doing a lot of work down there. Like I said, the bike shop, we have that going well. A number of projects, but it's fun to still be engaged there. And I had the opportunity to mentor and invest in a guy that now runs in Nicaragua, and that now is our field director down there and runs things day to day, which is neat to see him grow and make a difference and take things farther than I ever could. So
that's so cool. That's really cool. Yeah. So James, this kind of last thing, I'd love to just give a plug for, the book, as well as just, where to find it and where to find you.
Yeah. So Hope Realized, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your other favorite retailers. And I believe it'll be impactful in your life. Will give you a new perspective on hope and poverty, and just some encouragement that you can really, truly make a difference. You can find me at jameshbelt.com, my website. And if you want to find any more information about NicaWorks, you can go to nika.works. So,
cool.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, James, thanks for coming on. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you, Cartwright.
Thank you for listening to the Men Are Forged podcast. Summer's coming to an end, but I know some of y'all are still getting active. You're still going outside. Man, fall's going to be just perfect. And I've got the active wear for you for a brand with a mission. It's called the Three Nails Clothing Company. It's at threenailsclothing.com, and they've got great shorts, t-shirts, and hats for you to really help you be more active. But also, it's a brand with a mission to spread the kingdom and to share the vision of Christ. So you can go to, like I said, threenailsclothing.com. But when you check out, make sure you put in the Men Are Forged promo code. That's one word, Men Are Forged, all caps. That is because of this podcast, guys, because you're listening here, you get 10% off by using the Men Are Forged promo code at threenailsclothing.com. So go check out that, get some great active wear. And I appreciate y'all listening, and I'll see you next time.